But I thought the guys did a really nice job of Shedeur and operating, the guys making plays. So, again, a ton to teach off of.
Viewed that Stefanski did not pick Shedeur Sanders. Then Andrew Berry did not pick Shedeur Sanders. And I prescribe to that.
Exactly what he said way back then, we saw it show up. The fact that he's not getting first-team reps with the ones or the twos.
I'm telling you right now, Shedeur Sanders proves he's more than capable enough to lead this team to the playoffs, possibly the Super Bowl. I am downright saying that right here, right now. Lead this team to the playoffs.
You're telling me what he can't do. Like my coach just said in college, but hey, find something that he can do. See, you keep telling me what Shedeur can't do. Well, your job as a coach is to put players in position and find something that they can do.
I'll say no more. Again, say no more. So you're not doing him justice in practice, but still showed up in the game and looked the par and looked like that. What does that say?
Kevin Stefanski is about to become the first NFL coach in history to deliberately destroy his own career for racism. While Dillon Gabriel throws 11 passes wide of the mark out of 14 attempts, a catastrophic 21% accuracy rate, Stefanski keeps him ahead of Shedeur Sanders, who showed out every single snap with third-string players. This isn't incompetence. This isn't strategy. This is a white coach so committed to his racial bias that he's willing to sacrifice Super Bowl rings, his reputation, and his entire coaching legacy to keep a black quarterback from succeeding. The evidence is so damning, it will make your blood boil. Shannon Sharpe and Ocho Cinco have been dancing around the truth, calling it bias and agenda. But let's call it what it really is. Kevin Stefanski has made a conscious decision that his racial prejudices are more important than winning football games. This is a coach who watched Shedeur Sanders dominate without first-team reps, then publicly stated there's still a ton to teach off of while promoting Dillon Gabriel, who can't complete basic passes when the lights are brightest. In this video, I'm going to present irrefutable evidence that Stefanski's treatment of Shedeur Sanders isn't just wrong. It's career suicide motivated by racism so deep that he'd rather lose games than admit a black quarterback is better than his white alternatives. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Stefanski's coaching career is already over and why his racist decision-making has doomed both himself and the Cleveland Browns to failure. This is the most damning indictment of systemic racism in the NFL you'll ever see. The numbers don't lie, but Kevin Stefanski does. Let me present the statistical evidence that proves beyond any doubt that racism, not performance, is driving his quarterback decisions. Dillon Gabriel, 11 completions out of 22 attempts when all eyes were on him, a 50% completion rate with zero pressure from Shedeur Sanders. But it gets worse. On day 8 of camp, Gabriel completed just 3 passes out of 14 attempts, throwing 11 passes wide off the mark. That's a 21% completion rate in his most important audition. These aren't the numbers of a developing quarterback. These are the numbers of someone who has no business being on an NFL roster. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, working with third and fourth team players and getting no first team reps, still managed to make plays that forced Stefanski to admit the guys did a really nice job and were making plays. Ocho Cinco observed that despite not getting first-team reps with the ones or the twos, Shedeur went out there and looked the way he did. Here's where the racism becomes undeniable. Stefanski has all this data, has seen these performances with his own eyes, and still maintains that Gabriel deserves opportunities ahead of Sanders. There is no football-related explanation for this decision. None. Shannon Sharpe identified the core issue when he said, "You keep telling me what Shedeur can't do." Well, your job as a coach is to put players in position and find something that they can do. But Stefanski isn't looking for what Shedeur can do. He's looking for reasons to justify what he's already decided based on racial bias. The most damning evidence? Stefanski's public comments focus exclusively on Shedeur's limitations while completely ignoring Gabriel's catastrophic failures. When Gabriel throws 11 passes off target in a single practice, that's development. When Shedeur makes plays with inferior teammates, that's still a lot to work on. This isn't evaluation, it's racial profiling disguised as coaching. Stefanski has predetermined that the white quarterback deserves patience and opportunity while the black quarterback must prove himself to an impossible standard. Gabriel can fail 79% of the time and still get first-team reps. Shedeur can succeed with scrubs and still be told he needs more development. The statistical gap between these players is so enormous that maintaining Gabriel ahead of Sanders requires willful blindness to performance data. No rational coach makes this decision based on football merit. The only explanation is that Stefanski's racial bias is so strong that he's willing to ignore objective evidence to maintain his predetermined hierarchy. This is career suicide in real time. Stefanski is choosing to lose games rather than admit that his racial assumptions were wrong. He's destroying his own reputation to protect his prejudices. And the most tragic part? He's doing it so openly that even casual observers can see the racism driving his decisions. Kevin Stefanski's public comments about Shedeur Sanders read like a masterclass in coded racism, and the pattern is so consistent it's impossible to ignore. Every word choice, every emphasis, every deflection reveals a coach who has already decided that a black quarterback can't be trusted to lead his team. Listen to how Stefanski discusses Shedeur's performance. I thought the guys did a really nice job of Shedeur and operating the guys making plays. So, again, a ton to teach off of. Notice the language structure. He can't even give Shedeur direct credit for the plays. It's the guys making plays while Shedeur is just operating. Then he immediately pivots to what needs to be corrected rather than celebrating what was accomplished. This is classic racial bias in coaching. When white quarterbacks succeed, they're credited with leadership, intelligence, and playmaking ability. When black quarterbacks succeed, it's attributed to the system, the supporting cast, or pure athleticism. Stefanski can't bring himself to say, Shedeur played exceptionally well, because that would contradict his racial assumptions about black quarterback intelligence and leadership. Shannon Sharp called out this exact pattern. You keep telling me what Shedeur can't do. But notice what Stefanski never says about Dillon Gabriel's failures. When Gabriel completes 21% of his passes, there's no public discussion of what he can't do. When he throws 11 passes off target, there's no emphasis on a ton to teach off of. The white quarterback's failures are private development opportunities. The black quarterback's successes are public teaching moments. The most revealing aspect of Stefanski's language is his refusal to use definitive positive statements about Shedeur. Everything is qualified, hedged, or immediately followed by criticism. Nice job becomes ton to teach off of. Success becomes a learning opportunity. Excellence becomes evidence of what still needs work. Compare this to how coaches typically discuss promising young quarterbacks. They use words like impressed, exceeded expectations, showed real command, or demonstrated leadership. Stefanski's vocabulary for Shedeur is deliberately diminishing, designed to minimize achievements rather than celebrate them. Ocho Cinco identified the absurdity of this approach. How can Stefanski even say that Shedeur can't do this? The whole world has seen what he can do. But that's exactly the point. Stefanski can't acknowledge what the world has seen because it contradicts his racial narrative about black quarterback limitations. The language patterns reveal a coach who is psychologically incapable of giving a black quarterback the credit he deserves. Stefanski's words aren't just biased, they're self-sabotaging. He's creating a public record of his own racial prejudice while simultaneously undermining his team's chances of success. This linguistic evidence proves that Stefanski's decision-making isn't based on football evaluation. It's based on racial assumptions that he can't even articulate honestly. He's trapped by his own bias, forced to use coded language that reveals more about his prejudices than his coaching acumen. The most damning evidence of Kevin Stefanski's racism isn't what he says. It's the glaring double standard in how he evaluates identical situations based solely on the race of the quarterback involved. The hypocrisy is so blatant it destroys any pretense of objective coaching evaluation. Dillon Gabriel throws 11 passes wide of the mark in a single practice session, a performance so catastrophic that, from the very first snap, the defense had Dillon figured out. His completion percentage in critical moments hovers around 21%. His accuracy is so poor that he had no answers when pressured. Yet Gabriel continues to receive first-team reps and remains ahead of Shedeur on the depth chart. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders performs at a high level despite working with third and fourth team players and receiving no opportunities with the starting unit. Ocho Cinco observed that Shedeur succeeded even though he wasn't getting first-team reps with the ones or the twos. Shannon Sharp noted that Shedeur showed out every single snap and demonstrated he's an accurate thrower who, when he's got to make big throws in the red zone, he's pretty damn good at it. The double standard is crystal clear. The white quarterback can fail repeatedly and still be considered developing, while the black quarterback can succeed consistently and still be considered not ready. This isn't coaching, it's racial profiling with a playbook. Stefanski's treatment of these two players reveals the classic racist assumption that black quarterbacks must be perfect to be considered adequate, while white quarterbacks are given infinite patience and opportunity despite obvious limitations. Gabriel's 21% completion rate is treated as a learning experience. Shedeur's success with inferior teammates is treated as insufficient evidence of readiness. The most infuriating aspect of this double standard is how Stefanski justifies it. He focuses on Shedeur's supposed inability to handle complicated NFL defenses while ignoring that Gabriel can't handle basic passing accuracy against any defense. He questions Shedeur's readiness while promoting a quarterback who literally cannot complete passes when it matters most. Shannon Sharp identified this hypocrisy perfectly. How do the Browns know Dillon Gabriel will be able to do what they're claiming? The answer reveals the racist logic. They don't need Gabriel to prove anything because he fits their racial comfort zone. Shedeur, however, must prove everything because his success challenges their racial assumptions. This double standard is career suicide for Stefanski because it's so obvious that even casual observers can see the bias. When a coach promotes a 21% completion rate over demonstrated success, he's not making football decisions, he's making racial decisions. And those decisions will cost him games, credibility, and ultimately his job. The tragedy is that Stefanski's racism is so deep that he can't see how it's destroying his own career. He's so committed to his racial hierarchy that he's willing to lose football games to maintain it. That's not just bias, that's career-ending stupidity motivated by prejudice. Kevin Stefanski isn't just a racist coach, he's the perfect representative of the institutional racism that has plagued the NFL for decades. His treatment of Shedeur Sanders exposes a system designed to suppress black quarterback success while protecting white mediocrity, and his willingness to sacrifice wins for racial comfort makes him the poster child for everything wrong with NFL coaching culture. The pattern is unmistakable and historically consistent. Black quarterbacks face impossible standards, while white quarterbacks receive infinite patience. Shedeur must prove he can handle complicated NFL defenses despite demonstrating success at every level, while Dillon Gabriel gets first-team reps despite proving he can't handle basic passing accuracy. This isn't individual bias, it's systemic racism with Stefanski as its willing enforcer. Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco have been calling out this system for years, but Stefanski's case is so egregious it exposes the entire structure. When Ocho points out that Shedeur just did what we already saw him do at Jackson State and what we saw him do at Colorado, he's highlighting how black quarterbacks must repeatedly prove the same competencies while white quarterbacks are assumed to possess them. The institutional aspect becomes clear when you consider that Stefanski isn't making these decisions in isolation. The entire Browns organization is complicit in maintaining Gabriel ahead of Sanders despite the obvious performance gap. This suggests that the racism isn't just individual, it's organizational, with Stefanski serving as the public face of a systemically biased institution. The most damaging aspect of institutional racism is how it creates self-fulfilling prophecies. By denying Shedeur first-team reps, Stefanski ensures he can't develop chemistry with starting receivers. By limiting his practice opportunities, he prevents the kind of repetition that builds confidence and timing. Then, when Shedeur doesn't immediately excel in limited opportunities, Stefanski can point to these manufactured limitations as evidence of his original assessment. This is the genius of institutional racism. It creates the conditions for failure while appearing to provide opportunity. Stefanski can claim he's evaluating Shedeur while systematically denying him the resources necessary for success. It's discrimination disguised as development. The historical context makes Stefanski's behavior even more damning. The NFL has a documented history of suppressing black quarterback talent, from the systematic exclusion of the position for decades to the modern practice of converting black quarterbacks to other positions. Stefanski is continuing this tradition, using his position of power to maintain racial hierarchies that have nothing to do with football ability. What makes Stefanski's case unique is the transparency of his bias. Previous generations of racist coaches could hide behind less obvious performance gaps or claim they were following organizational directives. But Stefanski is choosing Gabriel's 21% completion rate over Shedeur's demonstrated success in broad daylight, making his racism impossible to deny or defend. By representing institutional racism so clearly, Stefanski has made himself the perfect target for accountability. His career destruction isn't just individual consequences, it's a necessary step in dismantling the systemic barriers that have limited black quarterback opportunities for generations. Kevin Stefanski's racist decision-making has set in motion a career destruction timeline that is now irreversible. Every day he keeps Dillon Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders, every press conference where he minimizes black excellence while excusing white mediocrity, every game where his racial bias costs the Browns victories, it all adds up to professional suicide that will end his coaching career in disgrace. The timeline is already accelerating. Shannon Sharpe's public criticism that Stefanski is pushing an agenda against Shedeur Sanders has put national attention on the coach's decision-making. Ocho Cinco's observation that Shedeur succeeded despite being denied proper opportunities has created a narrative that Stefanski can't control. The statistical evidence of Gabriel's failures versus Shedeur's success is now part of the public record. Here's what happens next. When the Browns inevitably struggle this season with Gabriel's 21% completion rate and Kenny Pickett's limitations, every loss will be attributed to Stefanski's refusal to play his most talented quarterback. The media narrative will shift from questioning his evaluation skills to questioning his motives. Fans will demand answers about why a coach would choose to lose games rather than start his best player. The most damaging aspect of Stefanski's career suicide is that he's created a paper trail of his own racism. His public comments minimizing Shedeur's achievements while excusing Gabriel's failures will be replayed endlessly when the Browns season collapses. Every press conference quote will be evidence of his bias. Every statistical comparison will prove his incompetence. But the real career killer is what happens when Shedeur eventually gets his opportunity, whether in Cleveland or elsewhere. When he succeeds at the NFL level, as Shannon Sharpe predicted he would, Stefanski's evaluation will be exposed as racially motivated rather than football-based. The coach who passed on a franchise quarterback because of racial bias will become a cautionary tale about the cost of prejudice in professional sports. The Browns organization will eventually be forced to choose between their racist coach and their talented quarterback. When that moment comes, Stefanski's fate is sealed. No NFL team will hire a coach whose racial bias cost his previous team a potential franchise quarterback. His reputation will be permanently destroyed, his coaching tree will be contaminated, and his legacy will be defined by choosing racism over rings. The most tragic aspect of this career suicide is its preventability. Stefanski could have embraced Shedeur's talent, developed him properly, and potentially coached a Super Bowl winner. Instead, he chose to protect his racial comfort zone at the expense of his professional future. The timeline is now unstoppable. Every game Gabriel struggles, every opportunity Shedeur is denied, every statistical comparison that favors the benched quarterback over the starter, it all accelerates Stefanski's professional destruction. He's not just losing football games, he's losing his career, his reputation, and his place in NFL history. Kevin Stefanski chose racism over rings, and that choice will define the rest of his life. The career suicide is complete. We're just watching the consequences unfold in real time. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. Kevin Stefanski has chosen his racial prejudices over his professional success, and the consequences are already destroying his career. Dillon Gabriel's 21% completion rate isn't being overlooked. It's being protected because it fits Stefanski's racial comfort zone. Shedeur Sanders' demonstrated excellence isn't being ignored. It's being suppressed because it challenges his racist assumptions about black quarterback leadership. This isn't just about one coach's bias. Stefanski represents the institutional racism that has plagued the NFL for decades, and his public destruction will serve as a warning to other coaches who think they can sacrifice talent for racial comfort. When Shannon Sharpe says Shedeur could lead this team to the playoffs and Super Bowl, he's not just evaluating talent, he's exposing the cost of Stefanski's racism. The career suicide is already complete. Every statistical comparison, every missed opportunity, every game lost because of racial bias adds another nail to Stefanski's professional coffin. He chose to protect white mediocrity over black excellence, and that choice will define his legacy forever. The most damning indictment isn't that Stefanski is racist, it's that his racism is so strong he's willing to destroy his own career to maintain it. He'd rather lose Super Bowls than admit a black quarterback is better than his white alternatives. That's not just bias, that's career-ending stupidity motivated by prejudice so deep it overrides basic professional survival instincts. Kevin Stefanski chose racism over rings, and history will remember him not as a coach who couldn't evaluate talent, but as a racist who was too proud to admit his prejudices were wrong. The Browns will move on, Shedeur will succeed elsewhere, and Stefanski will be remembered as the coach who let racial bias destroy everything he worked to build. This is the most controversial take I've ever presented, but the evidence speaks for itself. Do you think I'm right that Stefanski's decision-making is driven by racism, or am I going too far in calling this career suicide? Have you seen other examples of coaches making decisions that seem to prioritize racial comfort over winning games? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and be honest about what you really think is happening in Cleveland. Is this institutional racism in action, or am I connecting dots that aren't there? And if you believe this goes deeper than just one coach, let me know what other examples you've seen across the NFL. Don't forget to subscribe because next week, I'm exposing how this same pattern of racial bias is affecting quarterback evaluations across the entire league. The Stefanski case isn't isolated, it's systematic, and the evidence will shock you.